a long way to go. I'm coming home to my darling. Still got a long way to go. I need to set the caster on my front axle. And to do that, you need to adjust your wishbones. My frame rail. So if I give you a little demonstration, you'll understand why I need to manipulate them, let's just say. Get the camera back at a little bit of a distance so you can kind of see what I need to do. This is a Model A, a flattened Model A front cross member on this car, and the reason why I used a Model A cross member is because they're flatter than the 33-34, which essentially the flatter it is, the higher the spring is going to be, which is going to lower the car. So I have a flattened Model A cross member, which is at 6 degrees, which is standard. And that's what they ran back in the day for their caster on their spring and their front axle. So if I were to move this up and down, this will adjust. The further it goes down, the more caster I have. The higher it's raised, the less caster I have. Need to move this radiator before it falls. Alright, so anyway, sorry, to get back to my video, took a phone call. What? Alright, so what I need to accomplish is 7 to 8 degrees of caster. That's what I want. Some people stick with 6, some people like more. I think I'd probably be okay with 6, but once I set this, I don't have any adjustment. I don't have an adjustable link. If I had a full link style front end, I could have a lot more adjustment, but that's not the case. So, that being said, in order for me to put this up here underneath the frame rail, I have to lift it up. And what that ends up doing is it minimizes the amount of caster I have on my front axle. So it drops down to 4. And I need it to be around 7. So what I need to do is I need to pie cut the top of this and then lift this up and then still have my axle set at 7 degrees. Once I have my axle set at 7 degrees, I have my mount where it needs to be tacked onto the frame, I can then weld back my wishbone. So in order to do that, I need to remove this plate that I put on here just so I could roll it in and out of the garage. I'm gonna cut my wishbones, pie cut them, and get them ready to go so I can then re-weld them. These are Model A wishbones. I like them because they're shorter and where they line up onto the front of the cowl, underneath the cowl on the frame, that's what I wanted. I could have ran a longer wishbone, but then unfortunately it would have been tucked way up underneath the car and no access to it. And sometimes it interferes with the body, and I didn't want to do that. I'm going to get this plate cut off and then move on to the next step, which is pie cutting my wishbones. I had this strap hooked on here to keep my axle square with my frame. So after I pie cut these wishbones, I'm going to have to re-square it. It's fine, it'll only take a minute. That plate was just tack welded on there, so now that's taken care of. Missed it. I can get to work on, hopefully I have access to these. I don't want to have to jack the whole car up and move take the perch pins out and all that other stuff. I don't want to have to unbuild the front axle, so I'm hoping I can get to it the way it's set up now. So then pie cut it and get it to be just the angle I need it to be at, and get these wishbone mounts tacked. That would be really cool. Each piece you add, these things keep coming together more and more. Hi, honey.
No.
There's honey.
My PJs.
There's honey.
No.
You're in your PJs?
No.
I am too. So what I'm gonna do is I have to cut this here. I'm not gonna cut all the way through it. I'm gonna cut part way through it, and that is gonna allow me then to adjust the angle, so then I can make sure that I have the correct caster angle on my axle. So I'm gonna just get to cut. I'm gonna make a quick measurement so I know it's even on either side. I'll just do it an inch back. That's easy. You know what? I'll measure it from the. I'll do 2 inches. Two, yeah. I'll do 2 inches back. Again, things don't have to be so precise. I'm not saying you should hack through things, but you know, if it's 2 inches or 2.5 or wherever it is, I don't want to go too far back, but I do want to be able to be. I think these are welded. You can kind of feel, yeah, you can kind of see this bump here. So I believe this is a tube that's welded to this solid piece here. Alright, so straight back off the axle I am 2 1/8 inches. If it's straight back, 2 1/8. So I'll make that same mark on the other side. However, I need to two and a quarter, and then what I'm gonna have to do is V that. Let me grab a square. This is how they did things back in the day, so like I've said before, you don't want to hack your way through things, but at the same time, if you overthink things to a point where you're not getting anything done, then it's really hard. Not much tolerance to it, and go it up. There we go. It's almost to the point where I can flex it by hand and cut it through just a touch more. Alright, so I can close this by hand now, so that means I can open it by hand. So what I'm going to do now is start opening it up a touch, not much. I'm going to open it up at the top of 1/8 of an inch. If you can see what I'm attempting to do. I got that little wedge piece cut out of my wishbone. Now what I need to do is put a jack underneath the tie rod end at the wishbone mount, put a jack up underneath that, so that's where at the level it needs to be, and then I'll be able to measure the caster with an angle finder on the top of my kingpin, and then I'll be able to determine what the angle of my axle is. I might even be able to measure it here on this little steering arm. So I'm going to get a jack for under there, and then I'm going to work on figuring out the caster angle. If I still don't have enough caster, which I have a feeling I don't, I'll bend this back down and I'll open this up a little bit more. Once I get it to where I have the mount in the position it needs to be, and then my axle has the caster I want, at that point I can tack weld. I'll chamfer these edges, open these up a little bit so I can make sure I can get good penetration, a good weld, and then I can tack weld my mount to the bottom, to the underside of my frame. So I'm going to get a jack for this now and then check my caster. Jack now that is positioned up underneath the end of the wishbone. I did not put it underneath the mount because I don't want it to twist the mount in the tie rod end at the end. I have it underneath the actual wishbone itself. That has closed up that gap. And now what I need to do is determine the caster angle of my axle. And to do that, I'm going to use this. This is a digital angle finder. So as you turn it, either way, it'll tell you down degrees or up degrees, depending on which way it's facing. So sitting here, my frame is at 0.9. I mean, obviously it changes just by leaning on it. So what I need to do is find the caster angle of my kingpin or my axle. The problem with trying to determine the caster on top of the axle is it's not flat. You can't do it on top of the perch bolt because it's not flat. You can, worst case scenario, I guess mounting, get the angle from on top of the spring, but there's a little bit, some variables there because you have rubber bushings inside the perches and the shackles. So there's really only a few places you can get your reading from. The top of the kingpin, and I'm going to use the steering hoop to see where I'm at with my angle now. And in order to do that, I'm going to put a plate of steel there and then mount my angle finder to that. Let's see what I have. Yep, so I'm already off. So you can see what I have there. 4.9. So that's not enough. So what I need to do is I need to take more material out of my wishbone. It'll roll the axle back. And it'll close the gap, and then it'll end up having my wishbone mount higher, which is what I need. So, alright, so with my jack in place underneath my tie rod end, or underneath the tie rod itself, so as you can see at this point right now, I have 8.7 degrees caster, and I want to go a little over, and the reason for that is I'm going to be changing my rear tires, and my rear tires are about 1.5 inches to 2 inches taller than the existing tires that are on the car. So that being said, it's going to elevate the rear of the car, which will then actually, it won't change the caster angle on the axle of the car itself, but it will in relation to where the car is sitting now. It'll actually lower the caster level, I'd say probably by around 1 degree, which will put me roughly around 7.5 or so. That's essentially what I want. The more caster you're running, the better your car is going to track straight. So I'm happy with that. Roughly 8.5 at the moment. And then, as I said, when I lift the back of the car up, I'll show you the tires I'm going to run. Tires are going to run are 750/16 rear. I'm still in the process of locating the wheels that I want to run. This is a Firestone product. And as I said, they will shorten a little bit once they're mounted on the wheel and the tire itself is spread out a little. But you can see the height difference. It's not going to shrink any, you know, it's not going to shrink much more than it is now. So it's roughly 2 inches taller than the 820-15s that are on the car. So that being said, again, it's going to raise the back of the car, which is going to kind of change somewhat of the stance. It's going to change the stance, but it's not going to change the geometry of the car. But in relation to the angle that I'm working with now, it'll lessen it, and ultimately that's kind of what I want, to be in the 7 to 7.5, 8 degree range. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up that wishbone, double check everything, make sure I'm good to go. I need to re-square my axle with the frame, and I did that simply with a ratchet strap the other day. I made some measurements from my kingpin to that body mount hole, and in relation to, you know, both sides, I'll get it to right where it needs to be, and then I'll be able to get that tack mounted to the bottom side of the chassis. I then can get this welded here on the end of my, where I pie cut on my wishbone, and then I'll do the same on the passenger side. So everyone does things differently, and that's just something you gotta, you know, take into account. I'm gonna mount my wishbones with the bolt facing out, and I'll show you why. That is the angle at the steering that the steering's gonna be. And assuming my tire is straight, which it basically should be, let's just say from the fender, because I think the fender would hit first. I have 8.5 inches between the fender and the inside of the tie rod, which is what it's going to hit. If it is going to hit anything, the fender's going to hit the tie rod. So I have 8.5 inches. That's mounting the tie rod or the wishbone on the outside of the frame rail, right there. So I have 8.5 inches, right? Yeah, 8.5. Versus how I'm going to run it. So I had 8.5 inches before. Now I have 10 3/4. So I gained 2 1/4 inches of turning radius. Whatever that degree is, I'm not sure. It also helps with suspension movement. The further in they are, I think the better, freer the suspension is going to work. So at this point, like I said, I'm going to get my axle squared and then get some tacks. I got to clean up this wishbone. I'm going to get that cleaned up. My mount's already cleaned that up the other day. So I'm going to get this cleaned up with a little sanding disc, and then, like I said, get everything squared and tacked in place. Now I'm going to lower the jack down so I can move it around and get access to the wishbone. I don't know if I cleaned underneath this frame rail or not. The other day, I don't think I did. So I want to make sure it's cleaned up. However, there's 2 bolts in the frame, and I don't know what the heck those were from. There weren't any on the driver's side. So it looks like I'm going to be back here.
What are you doing?
I'm laying down taking a nap.
A long way to go. I'm coming home to my darling. Still got a long way to go.
rotate this tie rod end so the nut is facing out. But it's on it. Hi, honey.
So cold.
Freaking cold out there.
I need gloves.
Yeah.
Is it coming in here?
Yeah, not cool, bro.
It sticks in here.
Yeah.
I don't think you're supposed to breathe this in.
Probably not. Oh, excuse you. I don't know.
That was such a cold.
Honey, you nasty.
You're nasty.
You nasty.
No.
Girl, you nasty.
You're recording.
Record.
Just so every one of these viewers knows, that was the hose to the air compressor that
Yeah,
I stepped
because it
on.
always makes that noise. Yeah.
But it's not my butt.
I've been working in here for 5 years. Never heard that noise until you show up.
I did not fart.
Cannot see. Alright, that's good. Alright, I'm going to run this kingpin bolt up. Tighten that to center it.
Wow, that's sexy.
Yeah, I know.
Cardio?
Yeah, you're not kidding.
I'm used to this motion.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What motion is that?
The flick of your wrist.
I make these videos for kids, hon.
Sure. Kids in their between ages 50 to
Yeah, kids in their 50s
Yeah.
to 90s.
Yeah. You left one Whopper in the candy bucket.
What is it?
A Whopper.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Lone soldier. I don't know why that was even in there.
Looks like a big turd.
I thought it was COVID candy. I didn't want to touch it. So what I'm doing is I'm mounting the wishbone mount on an angle to mimic the angle of. So I want the back edge flush with the inside edge of the frame rail, and that'll just put less stress on. It'll put less stress on the tie rod end and the wishbone mount. Close that pie cut. All right, perfect. Perfect. All right, clean this up real quick. These are going to come back apart completely. I'll pull this entire front end apart. I'll have these wishbones up on my welding table, and I'll be able to weld these wishbones, finish weld them when the time comes when I have better access. I want to mimic the same way I did it before. I don't want to change anything. Alright, I'm going to fire up my welder.
Too badly all my bridges burned down. I'm so close to love. If you could wire me some money, well, I'll be home. Yeah,
With a taller rear tire on the car, that angle is going to change. Not drastically, but enough where it should work out to where I want it to be. So, and if it doesn't, you just pie cut. I'll just cut that tack on the wishbone, and then either open up or close in my pie cut more or less, and just fine tune it to where it needs to be. So that's it for me for the night. I got some errands to run with my girlfriend. Throw some things away real quick. I hate coming into my shop and have it in a mess. So people always comment, not on YouTube, but when they come here in person and always say, how can you get anything done in your garage? It's so clean. But I clean my garage pretty much every night after I'm done working on my car. Like I said, I just hate coming into the garage and having a mess on the floor and tools everywhere. Because then the next time you need something, you don't know where it is. So try to keep things in order. So that being said, thank you very much. Appreciate you guys following along. I'm not building this car to teach people how to build hot rods. I don't feel as though I'm an authority of that. However, I'm building my car and I want people out there to appreciate the fact that there's younger guys, a lot of us, like myself, that really love these cars and want to keep this hot rod tradition alive. And the only way to do it is by building them in our small garages, in our backyards. Some of us don't even have garages. So thanks again. Appreciate everybody watching. So that's a kind of just a quick video of the wishbones. I wasn't planning on that being my next video. I have done a few other things beforehand. I've had some glitches with my camera for some reason. So wishbones are in. Everything's tacked. And next will be to work on steering column. So then I can work on my firewall. Appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.